Hello and welcome. Tonight, Nigerian Labour Congress suspend its street protest hours after leading demonstrations over high cost of living on the first day of its planned two-day action. Pro-government group stages counter-protest in Abuja. Central bank bows to persisting inflationary and exchange rate pressures, raises monetary policy rate by 400 basis points to 22.75% from 18.75%. And the NDLEA makes single largest seizure of high-grade heroin consignment at the Murtala Mohammed International Airport in Lagos.
And on business news tonight, Central Bank of Nigeria warns of stricter forex regulatory environment after springing record interest rate hike to tame inflation.
On sports news tonight, Bayana of South Africa sets up clash against the Super Falcons of Nigeria for a ticket to the Paris 2024 Games.
And from the nation's capital, once again, the president gives assurance that all will be well, says there's light at the end of the tunnel as he launches handbook on expiratory employment levy.
And in international news from London, the US president says he hopes to have a ceasefire by next Monday in the Israel-Gaza war.
Barely hours after taking its dispute with the government to the streets across the country, the Nigerian Labour Congress, the NLC, this evening suspended its action, which is expected to enter its second day tomorrow. In a statement, the union explained that the decision followed a review of the first day nationwide action, which the NLC leadership says achieved the objective it had set. The statement signed by the NLC president and acting general secretary, however, notes that leaders of the union at state and national chapters will continue the action tomorrow with news conferences. It further notes that the NLC has decided to extend its initial one-week ultimatum, which was intended to expire by March the 3rd to March the 13th. According to the NLC, this is to enable government to implement all agreements reached on October the 2nd of 2023 and other demands presented in its letter during today's nationwide protest. Now, earlier today, the NLC had made good its plan to stage a nationwide protest over the high cost of living in the country, as well as unresolved disagreements with the federal government. In the nation's capital of Abuja, the union led hundreds of protesters in a march to the National Assembly, where they called on government to immediately implement policies that will ease the suffering of the people.
The leadership of the Nigerian Labour Congress, NLC, is making good its threat to stage a nationwide protest over rising cost of living in Nigeria, despite warnings from the Department of State Services. In the nation's capital, the president of the NLC, Mr. Joe Ajero, is leading the march, singing solidarity songs while displaying placards that articulate their demands. Security deployment helped to maintain orderliness, and the National Assembly gate is open for the protesters who thronged into the premises. Here are the concourse of the National Assembly. The protesters call on the President of the Senate to address their demands. The president of the NLC then hands over a letter to the National Assembly after making a speech.
There is hunger in this land. All over, in all the states of the Federation. The NLC is sounding it loud and clear that Nigerians are hungry. That our currency is weak. That transportation is high. That there is insecurity everywhere. That there is unemployment everywhere. That the wage is insufficient.
The protesters are demanding, among other things, that the federal and state governments provide subsidy for farmers to boost food production, put an immediate halt to the dollarization of the economy, abandon all IMF and World Bank policies, and pay all outstanding arrears of salaries and pensions of workers. The National Assembly leadership is promising to accelerate debate and actions on the demands.
We want to assure you that this letter will be discussed immediately at the plenary session. The leadership of the National Assembly feels what you feel. By the grace of God, you will see our reaction.
In a related development, dozens of workers in many northern states comply with the directives of the NLC to protest in their states. In Kaduna, Niger, Kwara, Kano, Plateau, Taraba, Katsina, and Sokoto State, workers marched through the streets to protest the rising cost of living.
This is a protest with simple message. We are saying there is hunger in the land, there is insecurity in the land, and people are not happy. These are the three messages.
There is hunger in the land, and things are very hard. And this is caused by the harsh policies of the present government.
The protesters sing solidarity songs and display placards with messages summarizing their demands.
We are protesting against the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria for so many reasons. One, he should fix the economy. Number two, he should also reduce the fuel price.
The common man cannot breathe. They say let the poor breathe, but the reverse is the case. And as a matter of that, we don't have any organization who can speak for the masses, who can speak for the poor ones, who can speak for the common ones, who can speak for the less privileged, except Nigerian Labour Congress. That is why we are all out this morning.
This is the second time in 6 months that the NLC is staging a nationwide protest and asking the government to implement policies that will ameliorate the sufferings of the people as a result of the rising cost of living.
Meanwhile, here in Lagos State, the NLC held a rally alongside members of affiliate unions and civil society groups who converged under the flyover bridge at Ikeja. From there, they marched on the streets and terminated the procession at the State House of Assembly Arena at Alausa, where they presented their demands to the state government officials. Our correspondent, Akeredolu, reports.
The Nigerian Labour Congress is the lead convener. They are joined by affiliate unions for a protest scheduled to hold for 2 days. The police have been on ground as early as 7 a.m., manning every point to ensure a peaceful procession. The movement starts about 9 a.m. The destination is 3 kilometers away from the starting point.
Untold hardship is too much in the land for all Nigerians. We want the government to quicken all their decisions. It should not be anti-people's policies, but decisions and policies that will yield a positive effort in ensuring that this untold hardship is brought to a halt.
It's a sunny day and a long walk. On the sideline, the police share water and biscuits to keep protesters hydrated. After walking for over an hour, the union members are now at their final stop.
We have no choice but to insist that every tier of government should manage its own affairs, should be accountable to the people. We are saying that since fuel subsidy was removed, the federal government, state government, and local governments are smiling to the banks without any commensurate improvement in the lives of our people.
After all said and done, they presented their demands to the Lagos state government officials who promised to treat their letters.
This is the letter from Mr. Governor. To him. No, we want to see Mr. Governor tomorrow.
If we have to start state police, Lagos State, we are ready for the state police. I'm not our commissioner, always making Lagos State one of the safest. Thank you very much for this.
It's the end of the rally here, day one at the State Assembly. The rally started at the Ikeja under bridge before the labor union leaders led protesters to this point. The demands have been submitted to the leadership of the State House of Assembly. They say they will gather tomorrow again and continue to press until the demands are met. Dare Idowu, Channels Television News.
Other states in the south also witnessed their own share of the protest, and this is how it all played out.
Among the litany of issues facing the nation at the moment, the most pressing in that list is the continuous rise in price of daily commodities for basic needs of many Nigerians. In the southern region of the country, protest commenced as planned by the labor union. In Bayelsa, the protesters marched to the state government house to lay their appeals.
Daily, the prices of goods and services rise without a check, as it has become near impossible to have price control mechanism in place.
Executive Governor Bayelsa State.
The governor on his part stated his administration's preparedness to reduce the burden on the state's workforce.
I want to assure you that as a worker-friendly government, from day one, we will also consider the few issues that you have raised here.
At the opposite side of the Orashi River, the NLC in Rivers State reiterates these demands and calls on government to fix the economy.
Reverse, and suspension of further increases in school fees across the nation. A drastic reduction and removal of import duties based on essential drugs and medical consumables to relieve the current hardship being witnessed by the sick.
In Imo State, the southeastern part of the nation, members of the NLC also came out to demonstrate and call on government for a quick fix to the current economic situation. Still in the southeast in Enugu State, NLC members assembled to add their voice to the current nationwide protest. And in Abia, under intense security, the members of the Nigerian Labour Congress have staged a peaceful protest in Umuahia, the Abia state capital.
We are telling the government, allow us to breathe. Yes. And we are telling the government, please, make things easier for workers. Yes, we cannot condone it anymore. Yes.
In Edo State, members also came out joining their labor union comrades to re-echo their current demands amidst the current economic situation. In Delta State, the labor union also came out to demonstrate their grievances. Meanwhile, members of the NLC also took their demonstration to the streets in Ogun State, where they further called on government to match their words with actions. The same scene plays out in Oyo State as members of the NLC also came out to demonstrate, and they were joined by Governor Seyi Makinde.
This is a trying period for our country. It is not a time for divisive activities. It is a time to pull together and confront the challenges that we have.
This is day one of the NLC protest as the protesters expressed their preparedness to stay on course for the 2 days of the protest.
In part two, after the break, federal government responds to the nationwide protest by the NLC. Plus, CBN raises monetary policy rate by 400 basis points to 22.75% from 18.75%. Please stay with us. Welcome back. If you just joined us, you're watching the News at 10, coming to you live on Channels Television from Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. Nigerian Labour Congress suspended street protests hours after leading demonstrations over high cost of living on the first day of its planned two-day action. Pro-government group stages counter-protest in Abuja. Persisting inflationary and exchange rate pressures forced the CBN to raise monetary policy rate by 400 basis points to 22.75%. The National Drug Law Enforcement Agency seizes its single largest consignment of high-grade heroin at the Lagos airport in what it describes as a breakthrough in its anti-drug war. And U.S. President Joe Biden optimistic of a ceasefire in the Israel-Gaza war by next Monday. As the NLC protests went on across the country, a pro-government group also staged a counter-protest in Abuja. Now, the group, which converged on the Unity Fountain before marching to the National Assembly, describes the protest by the NLC as unnecessary and asked that the workers' union engage in dialogue with the government. The group also accused those they describe as fuel subsidy cabals of sponsoring protests against the government.
We are peaceful protesters. We have no reason whatsoever to attack anybody. We only implore them earnestly to explore the path of dialogue. Coming out on the street is not the best thing. But since they come out with it, we are coming out to express ourselves, to enlighten and explain the critical situation happening to the country to Nigerian people. We are peace-loving people. We have no reason whatsoever to go into confrontation with anybody for any reason.
The Nigerian people and the Labour Congress should go back and sleep and sit down, because this country belongs to all of us. As they have right to protest, equally we have right to protest as a citizen of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. So everybody should withdraw his sword. Nigeria is made for all of us. It's not only made for NLC. Nigeria is not made for TUC. Nigeria is made for Nigerian people. If anybody make an attempt to bring this government down, it's not bringing the government down, it's bringing Nigeria down. I will not allow that.
Staying with the NLC protests, this time the Minister of State for Labour and Employment in Kirokau, Nyejocha, is asking Nigerians to remain steadfast and trust the President Bola Tinubu administration to take the country out of its current condition. The minister also says the federal government has kept a near-perfect scorecard on its part with regard to the 15-point memorandum of understanding reached with organized labour in October last year. She was speaking on our political program, Politics Today.
If you plant a seed, it will get rotten before it germinates and become fruit or become something that you'll be able to use. Nigeria, of me, our government is on planting season, and Nigerians have to be fair to have patience for this seed that we are planting to germinate.
Have you performed on the MOU? There are 15 items of the MOU.
Absolutely. If you go to number 13 of that agreement, you will see that it says all parties commit to henceforth abide by dictates of social dialogue in all our future engagements. It's one of the agreements that Labour is not talking about. Organized Labour said we should keep this agreement. That is no more about this agreement. That they had over the weekend have been reeling out what we've done and what we've not done, and we said we've done virtually all. And I believe that, as far as I'm concerned, we've done almost all the things in this agreement.
How many percentage would you say you've done?
I would say 90%.
Of everything?
Yes.
The Central Bank of Nigeria's Monetary Policy Committee today raised monetary policy rate, that's the MPR, by 400 basis points to 22.75% from 18.75%. This was announced by the CBN Governor, Mr. Yemi Cardozo, at the end of the first monetary policy meeting in 2024. Now, the MPC also raised the cash reserve ratio, that's the CRR, to 45%, while leaving liquidity ratio unchanged at 30%. According to Mr. Cardozo, the considerations of the two-day deliberations include persisting inflationary and exchange rate pressures. Our correspondent, Sarah Achimogu, reports.
This is the first Monetary Policy Committee meeting since July 2023 and the first under the new Apex Bank Governor, Yemi Cardozo.
I hope that decisions of the MPC.
The Monetary Committee meeting is coming at a time when inflation is at an all-time high of 29.9%, triggered by an increase in food prices and living conditions of most Nigerians. It is for this reason that the committee raised the monetary policy rate.
The committee decided to further tighten monetary policy as follows. 1, raise the MPR by 400 basis points to 22.75 from 18.75%.
Some reasons were attributed to the rising rate of inflation by the committee. This includes insecurity and poor infrastructure.
Considering the option of a hold policy, the evidence revealed that previous policy rate hikes have slowed the rise in inflationary pressure, but not to a desirable extent. Members considered various scenarios of hold and hike and concluded that inflation could become more persistent in the medium term and thus pose more regulatory challenges, if not effectively anchored.
The Apex Bank boss then gives an account of how a total of 10 trillion naira disbursed for various interventions over 6 years failed to yield the desired results.
The interventions that took place in the recent past were estimated in excess of 10 trillion naira. I'm not talking about ways and means. I'm talking about the interventions that you just asked about. Over 10 trillion naira. What was the budget of the federal government of Nigeria? What was the budget of the largest state in Nigeria? Do the math, and it will tell you the extent of damage.
The Monetary Policy Committee of the Apex Bank promises to continue to keep an eye on both the monetary and fiscal authorities to ensure that the nation's economy is restored to the path of growth while projecting an economic growth rate of 3.3% for the year 2024. From the headquarters of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Sarah Achimogu, Channels Television News.
All right, for more on the CBN's MPC meeting, we're now being joined on the news at 10 by the CEO of Financial Derivatives Company Limited, Mr. Bismarck Rotimi, as we discuss the decisions reached at that meeting. Mr. Rotimi, thank you for joining us on the news at 10.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so the latest development, MPC, that's the CBN's MPC under the leadership of Yemi Cardozo, the CBN governor, has now raised the MPR by 400 basis points to 22.75% from 18.75%. Of course, we all know the situation with our economy, but let's start by finding out, or should I ask you generally, from the outcome of the decisions reached at this meeting, what should we be expecting, going forward for the Nigerian economy, especially regarding issues like inflation, a rising cost of living, and of course the exchange rate?
Let's put some context here. This is the largest increase in interest rates ever in the history of the bank and Nigeria. I call it the audacity of monetary policy. Don't forget that the last meeting we had was in July last year. That's about 7-8 months ago. So one, cumulative, clearing the backlog and then preparing yourself for the future. But the context here is that there's a crisis of confidence and a crisis of scarcity. And therefore, 4 things are scarce in Nigeria, very scarce. There's a shortage of dollars, as you can see there. There's a shortage of electricity. There's a shortage of food. And most important, there's a shortage of truth, right? So this combination of shortages is leading to the discontent which you saw on the streets today. And people can only take it for so long, right? So they need dollars, they need electricity, they need food, and more than anything else, they need the truth. So what was it? In the last 20 times, 20 meetings, 10 times status quo, 8 times, 9 times increases, and 1 time there was nothing, right? Now, in fact, 1 time they reduced the rate. So how does this interest rate increase improve the supply problem? In a way, yes, because it reduces the propensity to consume and increases the propensity to save. What is saved is now invested. So what has been done? The central bank came out clearly to say, this is what we are, and we're going to keep our eyes on the ball. That's what I said. 20 meetings, 10 times status quo, 9 times increase, and 1 time down. Cumulatively, in July 2023, the power market rate was 7.99. It got all the way to 19.15, and the NAFEM rate is actually 1,778. But guess what? Today, the power market rate went down to 1,530, and as a matter of fact, people are buying at 1,490, coming down all the way from 870 7 months ago. So that's movement in the right direction. Now, what have we done? We've seen inflation come to 29.9%, while interest rate on treasury bills went up to 22.75. There's still a negative carry here. So the marginal propensity to save will have to reduce, marginal propensity to save will have to increase, marginal propensity to consume will have to actually go in the other direction. So why tighten so much? What kind of inflation do we have? We have an inflation what we call, in 2015, it was 9%, and that was high inflation. In 2018, it was 12%. We call that spiraling inflation. And then by 2024, we have what we call galloping inflation. What we don't want is to go into hyperinflation. It's a 19-year high, and food inflation is at 35%. So people are under pressure. They are hungry, they're angry, and they're irritable. And they are becoming desperate. A desperate man is a dangerous man. So what do we want to do? We see that in 2025, it will moderate and begin to come down and soothe nerves. Now, what does this mean? There are 4 factors that are leading to high inflation. Number 1 factor is the exchange rate, 50% pass-through. Number 2 is money supply, 93.7 trillion naira. That's 25% effect. Then supply chain disruption and other factors, 15%. Fuel price is 10%. So if you solve the money supply problem and solve the exchange rate problem, you've knocked off inflation. But guess what? In Q4, this was a basket. Food inflation was 35%. Non-food basket was 23.5%. So the real culprit here is food inflation. Now, how does this? So is this move enough to reduce inflation? Partly. Is it it's a necessary but not sufficient condition. Policymakers will still scratch their heads. And the next meeting is exactly 4 weeks from today. We'll wait and see what happens. Now, how does it affect you in the price basket?
Especially the common man on the street.
Now, a bag of rice in December was 70,000. Currently it's 78,000. By April, we think it will be 80,000 naira. A bag of beans was 50,000. Currently 68,000. It goes up to 70,000. Tomatoes is at 30,000. It goes up by 100% to 60,000. Bread from 1,200 is now 1,500. Yam 2,500 to 3,300. Guess what? The big culprit here is the eggs. The eggs, 1 egg is now 160 naira. It's now, we expect it to go to 5,000 naira. What happens? Because next month you have Ramadan fast and you have the Easter.
Easter, that's right.
So what is going to happen? Impact on you, go back again. First, so you immediately, some things are going to change. Medical tourism is going to reduce. School fees, international school fees will increase. That's what it is. School fees increase, medical tourism increase. Airfares, it's now 2.4 million naira Lagos-London return. Abuja is 500,000 naira return. premium economy. Your rent will go up by over 100%, and your transfer fares are going to stay high. So some difficult days, I had some slight more pain before the gains come. Now, what happens next? Right? We think that during Ramadan, people eat once a day, but we found out the data shows that one meal is more than 3 meals previously. So basically, we expect prices to increase during Ramadan and during the Easter. So what do we see? Commodity prices will remain elevated during the festive period. Interest rates will increase, right? And stronger transmission mechanism. The Naira begins to appreciate, and the stock market goes into correction and bear territory. We expect the stock market to continue to be negative for the next 1 or 2 weeks. So that, you can call that a buying opportunity, but let me tell you, this situation is a wake-up call. The government and the policymakers will either have a wake-up call where they do the things right, or they will have what Bob Marley described as a natural mystic, which says that this may be the first trumpet, it might as well be the last. What happens after that? Check out what Bob Marley said. Thank you.
Mr. Bismarck, thank you so much for your thoughts on the news at 10. Still ahead on the news at 10, more from the Central Bank of Nigeria, which warns of stricter forex regulatory environment after springing record interest rate hike to stem inflation. That will be on Business News. Please join us again. Welcome back. Let's now head to the nation's capital, where Gloria Omezoke is standing by to give us the very latest from our Abuja studios. Hello, Gloria.
Many thanks, Ayo. Now, Nigeria may be going through a difficult period at the moment, but there is light at the end of the tunnel. This assurance is again coming from the president against the backdrop of agitations by Nigerians for a better living condition. President Bola Tinubu expressed this optimism at the launch of the Handbook on Expatriate Employment Levy at the State House, where he applauded the scheme as a game changer. Our State House correspondent, Larry Lassisi, has this report.
The council chamber in the State House is alive again with ministers, top government officials, and representatives of some agencies for the unveiling and launch of the Handbook on Expatriate Employment Levy. In his remarks, the Minister of Interior outlines the objective of the initiative.
The part of the motivation is to reduce the dependence of companies on foreign personnel, and of course to also reduce the rate at which renewal for expatriate quota is being sought after by companies.
A member of the National Assembly who is present said the policy will help address the unemployment in the country.
And I'm very excited that this whole thing at the end of the day centered around the need to ensure that jobs that Nigeria can do are handled by Nigerians and not by expatriates. I have been concerned about how we can put in place a policy that will ensure that companies, whether indigenous companies or foreign companies, don't bring technicians and read them as engineers, and some Nigerian engineers work under them as technicians.
The president described the policy as a game changer.
We expect revenue generation improvement, improved naturalization and indigenization, employment of more Nigerians by foreign companies operating in this country, balancing of employment opportunity between Nigerians and expatriates.
He also emphasized the need to always assure Nigerians of a better future.
We must assure Nigerians that there's light at the end of the tunnel. We might be going through difficult periods. We are glad that good effort is being made to retool, re-engineer the finances of the country, and make growth our hallmark.
It was then time to launch the handbook.
Now, this policy is expected to help generate revenue, to also encourage local employment and regulate the labor market. But the president has warned that it should not become a bottleneck or be used to frustrate potential investors. From the presidential villa, Lanre Lasisi, Channels Television News.
The Crime Matters, the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, NDLEA, has made a major breakthrough in its fight against illicit drugs with the seizure of what it describes as the single largest consignment of high-grade heroin at the Murtala Mohammed International Airport, Ikeja, Lagos. The chairman and chief executive officer of NDLEA, retired Major General Buba Mbawa, announced the result of the latest operation during a press conference in Lagos. In other stories, the federal government says it is committed to addressing energy poverty affecting about 92 million Nigerians, especially those in off-grid communities across the country. The Minister of Power, Mr. Adebayo Adelabu, made this pledge at the opening of a round table between state governments and distribution companies, organized by the Rural Electrification Agency in collaboration with the Federal Ministry of Power and development partners in Abuja. The minister added that collaboration of stakeholders in the power sector is critical in addressing Nigeria's energy challenges.
It's a two-day high-level roundtable with power sector experts and government representatives.
Experts and stakeholders from far and near.
The event, with a theme, fostering collaboration and partnership with states and discos to enhance rural electrification access across the country, seeks to allow industry players, government, developers and other stakeholders discuss possible pathways for collaboration. The Minister of Power used the occasion to reiterate government's commitment to address challenges in the power sector while charging all stakeholders to collaborate to shaping Nigeria's energy landscape.
By seamlessly integrating on-grid and off-grid efforts, we can ensure that every citizen, regardless of location, enjoys the benefits of reliable, sustainable power supply. Our efforts must continue to address and catalyze the socio-economic benefits of sustainable energy access. Only then have we done justice to this nation.
Examining the provisions and implications of the Electricity Act 2023 in the context of rural electrification is also in focus at this meeting.
We have been effective towards providing power with interconnected mini-grids. And I think the state governors and the state governments have to take cognizance of this.
Of the Central Bank of Nigeria. As far as the Central Bank is concerned, we are moving to a very aggressive regulatory environment. We are moving to a very aggressive regulatory environment where those policies have been coming out, as you can see, and tolerance for people not to abide by the regulations that are coming out and to comply is zero. People will have to abide by those regulations, and those that do not will face the consequences for not doing so. As we look to what has happened in the past, I can assure you that a very thorough exercise is going on to identify what needs to be done.
Meanwhile, the CBN has formalized dollar sales to Bureau de Change BDC's operators after a 3-year break. The central bank explains that the move is aimed at stabilizing the naira and narrowing the gap between the official and unofficial exchange rates. According to a statement released today, the CBN says it plans to sell $20,000 weekly to each BDC at a rate of 1,301 naira to $1, and the BDCs are allowed to sell to end users at a margin not more than 1% above the purchase rate from the CBN. Meanwhile, experts are reacting to the central bank's MPC interest rate hike of 400 basis points, and the latest is from the Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprise, CPPE. The CPPE says while the MPC's decision to hike interest rates aligns with conventional central banking practices worldwide, it fails to reckon with domestic peculiarities. The CPPE adds that the surge in MPR and CRL is expected to further tighten access to credit, worsening the challenges faced by banks and businesses as current lending rates already hover between 25 to 30%. Now we head to the domestic equities market, where the index slumped further into the negative territory at the close of trade today, following the bigger than expected interest rate hike by the central bank. Laddie Williams tells us more.
It's another day, another naira, and investors in the equities market take more profit off the table. Look at the all-share index. They're holding on to the 100,000 level by 582 points, 1.39% drop. The question now is, will 100,000 hold for the all-share index? Let's look at the sectoral performance now. We see the banking counter hammered today, 3.35% there, a big drop. Consumer goods, 0.17% drop, and we see oil and gas unchanged. Market mover today, we're seeing MTN Nigeria with a market cap of 4.54 trillion naira. They're dragging the market down with a big drop, about 9% at this time. We also see 5 of the Fugas also down today. All of that adding to the down trend we see in the market today for the close. Well, we got that decision for the first MPC meeting of 2024. It was a hike as widely expected. MPR now stands at 22.75%, taking borrowing costs even higher. Well, that's how your money performed today. The Bears have it.
That's a wrap on business news. It's back to Ayotunde for the rest of the news at 10.
Thank you so much, Will. Well, in the meantime, the CBN Governor, Yemi Cardozo, says the Apex Bank is not responsible for the current economic challenges, but is only working to resolve the issues in the country.
The central bank governor, I and my team are not responsible for the woes that we have today. We are part of the solution. We're determined to ensure that we work hard to get out of the mess that Nigeria is in. We assumed responsibility in a time of crisis of confidence. There was a crisis of confidence, and you may all want to go to bed and wish that that crisis of confidence was not there, but it was. And we can't turn back the clock. All we can do is do the difficult things to make a bad situation better.
U.S. President Joe Biden says he is hopeful for a ceasefire in the Israel-Gaza conflict by Monday. We'll hear Simon Pusey with other international stories in Around the World in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the channel's studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. The US president says he hopes to have a ceasefire by next Monday in the Israel-Gaza war.
Not a bribe.
Joe Biden was visiting an ice cream parlor with TV comedian and actor Seth Meyers when he made the comments.
Well, I hope by the beginning of the weekend. The end of the weekend.
At least my national security advisor tells me that we're close. We're close. It's not done yet. And my hope is by next Monday, we'll have a ceasefire.
It comes amid reports of some progress reached in ongoing negotiations involving Israel and Hamas representatives in Qatar. The Hamas-run health ministry in the Gaza Strip says at least 29,878 people have been killed in the territory and over 70,000 people have been wounded. A US airman has died after setting himself on fire in front of the Israeli embassy in Washington, D.C., shouting "Free Palestine."
Of the United States Air Force, and I will no longer be complicit in genocide.
In a live-streamed video, Aaron Bushnell said he would no longer be complicit in genocide. After setting himself alight in what he called an extreme act of protest, the serving US Air Force member was taken to hospital. A Pentagon spokesman called the incident a tragic event. French President Emmanuel Macron has said it is key for Europe's security to defeat Russia in Ukraine amid urgent pleas for more weapons from Kyiv.
Tout a été évoqué ce soir de manière très libre et directe.
He was speaking in Paris, where he said that European leaders had agreed to set up a coalition to give Ukraine medium and long-range missiles and bombs. Russian troops have made recent gains in Ukraine, which faces big arms shortages. Kyiv is critically dependent on modern armory supplies from its Western allies, particularly the US, to be able to continue fighting Russia, a much bigger military force with an abundance of artillery ammunition. Australian police say 2 bodies have been found during the search for missing Sydney couple Jessie Baird and Luke Davies. Beaumont Lamar Condon, a police officer who once dated TV presenter Mr. Baird, was earlier charged with murder. The bodies were discovered on a rural property in the town of Bungonia. Police said that after initially refusing to cooperate with the investigation, Mr. Lamar Condon finally disclosed where the 2 bodies were located on Tuesday morning. Donald Trump is appealing against a New York judge's ruling that he must pay $454 million in penalties and interest in a civil fraud case. This month's judgment was $355 million, but the amount has soared with interest, which will keep accruing by at least $112,000 a day. New York Attorney General Letitia James has said if Mr. Trump does not pay, she will seek to seize some of his assets. He was found to have inflated property values to obtain better loan terms. Judge Arthur Engoron also banned the former US president from doing any business in the state for 3 years. India has unveiled 4 Air Force pilots who have been shortlisted to travel on the country's maiden space flight scheduled for next year.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Tuesday announced the names of the 4.
The Gaganyaan mission aims to send 3 astronauts to an orbit of 400 kilometers and bring them back after 3 days. India's space agency, ISRO, has been carrying out a number of tests to prepare for the flight. In October, a key test demonstrated that the crew could safely escape the rocket in case it malfunctioned. And a former professor at the Albert Einstein College of Medicine has announced the school would be tuition-free because of her $1 billion donation.
I'm happy to share with you that starting in August this year, the Albert Einstein College of Medicine will be tuition-free.
Students erupted in cheers and tears as Dr. Ruth Gottsman made the announcement. The college is in the Bronx, New York City's poorest borough, while tuition at the school is nearly $59,000 per year. Dr. Gottsman's gift is the largest donation ever given to a medical school in the United States. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the channel's studios in Lagos.
Thanks, Simon. Sports News now. It's official. Reigning African women champions South Africa have set up a 2024 Olympic qualifier clash against 9-time African champions, the Super Falcons of Nigeria. The Bayana defeated Tanzania in the return leg of the qualifying fixture 1-0 in Johannesburg to advance 4-0 on aggregate, having won the first leg 3-0. Both sides will meet in April for the final round of qualifiers. South Africa chasing their first Olympic ticket since Rio 2016, while the Super Falcons are targeting their first in 16. Kano Pillars in
suspended its street protest barely hours after leading demonstrations over high cost of living on the first day of its planned two-day action. But this came as a pro-government staged a counter-protest from the NLC to embrace dialogue. That's the news at 10 tonight. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Akeredolu. You have a good night and please stay safe.